Okay, it looks like we are officially live here in our Facebook group. So if you are currently already joining in for this particular webinar, definitely just leave a quick comment in the chat. Let us know if you can hear us and if you can see us. I just want to do a quick tech check before we get started. And this is always the fun part where you get like that 10-second delay and you're just kind of wondering, what's going on? And there they are.
There
okay.
Okay. Yeah, is this thing on?
So it looks like we are all good to go here. So if you are joining us for today's webinar, today's topic is the client experience, where it goes wrong and how you can fix it. And the reason that we wanted to cover this particular topic today is that as an interior designer, repeat clients and referrals can often make up the biggest revenue opportunities for your business. And to get them, your client experience needs to be on point. But on the flip side, there's also a lot of common mistakes that could be sabotaging your client experience without you even realizing it. And that can ultimately hurt your chances of driving repeat business and referrals. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to learn how to audit that client experience so you can identify and correct these problematic areas at every stage. Which leads me to our lovely guest for today. So Katie McFarlan is the owner of Dakota Design Company and she's an operations consultant for interior designers. And she's going to be walking us through her auditing process. Now, Katie here has over 18 years of experience in the luxury service industry. She has in-depth knowledge on all aspects of operations and project management. And Katie has worked with design businesses of all sizes and has helped over 100 one-on-one clients define their services, standardize their processes, and elevate their client experience. So let's all give her a big hello. Thank you so much for joining us, Katie.
Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and excited to go through my favorite topic, the client experience.
Perfect. Well, I think that we're all ears. And I think what we can do here is if we're all set and ready to go, I'm basically just going to let you go ahead and take over for today. And let me go ahead and get this screen set up. So we should be seeing the screen on, well, everybody let us know if you're seeing the screen on your end. I'm going to go ahead and remove myself.
All right. It looks like everybody can see the screen and hear us and everything. So thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk about this topic. This is something I talk about day in and day out in my company. So we're going to cover where the client experience goes wrong and how to fix it. So I know Sheila already gave a little intro about me. I am Katie McFarlan. I'm an operations consultant for interior designers, not an interior designer myself. I have a background in wedding planning, project management, and business operations. And I've been working with interior designers for 6 years now, over 6 years. So I have an all-female team, and my team and I, we provide consulting and operation or an implementation to interior designers. So we set up software systems, help them refine their services, pricing, processes, all of that good stuff. So with all of our clients, no matter what they come to us with, we always go and start with their client experience because it's like the key to everything in your company. So today we're going to walk through each of the phases of the standard design process. I'm going to talk through the mistakes that we see and then the fixes. So we'll walk through the inquiry phase, the proposal phase, onboarding, delivery, and then offboarding. And then at the end, I have a free download for you, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. So just before we jump into it, I just want to emphasize the client experience is not just the cards and the gifts and the dinners that you send to your clients throughout your process. It's how potential clients and existing clients experience your company. And so they do this with you or without you. So the things we're going to cover today are both. They're going to cover things that you can do while they're working with you and things that you can set up so they work for you when you're not there. So this is going to be like the client experience is what happens the moment someone finds your website all the way through when you offboard them and do their final installation. So one thing to keep in mind as you design your own client experience is that you are the expert in your design process, not your clients. So you want to make it as easy as possible for them to say yes to working with you. So just some quick benefits of a well-designed client experience. So we find that business owners and their teams benefit from more efficiency, easier delegation, clearer boundaries and timelines. They have more confidence with clients because they can stand by their process. They are able to book more ideal clients because their process helps them weed out who would be a good fit and who wouldn't. they typically have higher customer satisfaction and see increased revenues. So in my opinion, the client experience process lays the foundation for everything you do as an interior designer and as a business owner. So jumping into the inquiry phase. So the inquiry phase is before they become a client. So this is going to be when they come onto your website and they submit their form, or they email you, or they call you, or they're on the phone with you, all of those things. So this is when they are not a client yet. So some of the mistakes that we see a lot is that at the inquiry phase, a potential client has no idea what type of budget they should have to work with you. And when this happens, it means you're likely getting a lot of inquiries that aren't good fit, because they have, looking at your website, looking online, they have no clue what your pricing is. Another inquiry phase mistake is that you might be attracting bad fit clients. So if your branding and images aren't aligned with your pricing, you'll attract the wrong clients. So you'll have clients who are coming to you for projects that you're showing on your website that maybe you don't actually want. And you'll also get a lot of pushback on price. So if your prices are higher than the imagery on your website, right? So if it's out of alignment, people are going to push back on price, because they're going to look at your body of work and say, well, wait, why do you charge that much? Like, I don't see any full service projects on here. I don't see that level of detail. I don't see X, Y, or Z. So another mistake we see at the inquiry phase is contact form issues. So I see this a lot, and to me, this is like something like you should do this, and you can do this in 2 minutes after this presentation wraps. So if people don't trust your bare bones contact form, so if you go to your contact page and there's just a contact form that says name, email, message, like as a consumer, I don't trust that. I don't trust that I'm ever going to get a response. I think that's just going off to like some spam folder. No one's ever going to respond to me. And also, don't they need like my project address and like, I don't know, when I want to get started and like how I heard about them. So if you have a bare bones contact form, I think that can have a potential client lose some trust in you. On the flip side of that is I see a lot of contact forms that have so many questions that as a potential client, I don't have time for that. Like, I don't even know if I want to work with you. I don't even know if I can afford you. Yet you want me to like tell you my dog's name, send you pictures of my living room, send you pictures of my inspo, like, and then answer all these other questions. Where do I like to shop? All these things. That creates friction, right? People don't have time for that. So they likely will just not inquire, or they'll come a roundabout way and inquire in a way that maybe isn't ideal for you. Maybe they'll call you, maybe they'll text you, maybe they'll drop into your office, and then you're not able to control that experience. The other inquiry phase mistake is prospects get no information from you. So again, you are the expert. Oftentimes your client who's hiring you, they have not done this before. They've not worked with an interior designer. And if they haven't worked with a designer who has your process. Every process is so different. So it's up to you to let them know how you work. But if they have to ask all the questions, if they have to like pull and pull and pull to get information from you about your services and your process and your timeline and your cost and how do you source and all of that, it's going to be so like painful for them. And they know they're already going to be, doing this long project. They don't want to start off with pain. So if there's no information from you and they feel like they're pulling teeth, that's a huge, huge mistake. The other thing is too many steps. So if it takes too many steps for a prospect to schedule a call with you or to get information from you, again, they're going to assume that the entire process with you will be hard and you will likely lose them right out of the gate. So some ways to fix that is, one, provide minimums. So you probably have a general idea of like what you will and won't leave the house for or get out of bed for. So if you know that, and maybe it's not just a fee, maybe it's your project size, maybe it's a number of rooms, maybe it's a project budget or a design fee number, have that information and you can share that on your website. So a starting at price, or, for projects with one full room or more, or, furniture budgets of 30,000 or more, put those numbers on your website as just a preliminary screening and to give people an idea of this is what our prices start at. If that's what you had in mind, then then inquire. The other thing, aligned pricing. So again, if you're showing photos that don't align with your pricing, you're going to get a lot of pushback. If you showcase only your pro photos of projects you want more of, so don't show the projects you don't like and you never want to do again, then you'll attract the clients who want those projects and who want that level of quality and finished product in their home. If you simplify your contact form, so you don't need to know someone's design style, their favorite place to shop. You don't need to know any of that. You just need to know the like preliminary screening factors of, are they a good fit to work together and to move through this next step of my process. So collect only the key information you need to screen potential clients in or out, and make it easy for them, like make it relevant, right? You need their address, you need their phone number, project timeline, like when do you want to get started? Do you have a budget in mind? What service are you interested in? Tell me about your project. Really just easy questions that like I can just, everybody knows those things, but I might not know like what's the feeling I want my room to have. I don't know that yet. The other thing that you can do to fix these mistakes is educate your prospects. So when you first get an inquiry, send out an investment guide with information about your services, your pricing, your process. Don't hide from the numbers. Don't hide from the fact that it's an 8-week design process or that you only source trade if you do. They need to know this at some point. So just give them the information. If you find that people are always mad about a receiving warehouse, tell them that up front. You're not going to change your process for them. So always educate them and give them information they didn't even know they need. And that is going to instantly build that trust. Then also provide them a clear and simple path. So the steps in your initial process should be so simple and well laid out that they always know what to expect. Okay, we'll do this call. And then the next thing she does is a $500 consultation. And then after the consultation, she said it'll be a couple days to put together the proposal or the contract scope, LOA, whatever. So again, if you have that clear process right from the gate, that will set you apart from other designers. So proposal phase mistake. So I say proposal, what I mean here is your scope of work and contract. So whatever you're sending over, the proposed, scope of work, design fee, and contract. So at this phase, some mistakes that I see is that the contract comes and the client is completely shocked, or the prospect is completely shocked. They had no idea that these were the numbers, like no idea that the fee was going to be $100,000 or that they should have a furniture budget of $600,000, whatever. So, if the contract is coming as a surprise to them, you're going to have a really awkward situation on your hands. And two, you wasted a lot of time for your company, and you also wasted this potential client's time. So another mistake is that the contract takes weeks to get over. And I know a lot of designers, they share oh, I wish I could be quicker at this, but it just takes me forever. So after your client talks to you, they're going to be the most excited they ever are in the whole process, right? To get started. They're so excited. They found you. They think you're so unique and amazing. But if your contract takes weeks to prepare, they're going to start talking themselves out of why they should work with you. Also, they could find another designer who gets a contract to them more quickly. If your contract has, if your contract has nothing specific in it about what you're going to do, then they might so for example, you send over your scope of work and it has 3 bullets of okay, we're going to do the living room, the kitchen, and the bedroom. And the fee is $35,000, and we're anticipating a $300,000 budget. They'll be for those 3 things, they're not going to see. There could be a disconnect between what you're saying you're going to do and the fee. So you should be very specific. They need to know what they're getting. Another thing is not providing a timeline. So again, timing and budget, these are huge buying decisions. They need to know these 2 pieces of information. So I see a lot of designers when they send over the proposal and the contract, there's no timeline. They're not letting them know when they can start, how long the project's going to be, any of that information, which again is really critical, because if I have the contractor at my front door and he's starting tomorrow and my designer's well, I can't start till next month, and then it's an 8-week design process, I can't work with that designer. Then the other phase is too many steps. So by sending their proposal over, you're sending over a proposal and then a scope of work and then a separate contract and then a separate design fee. And it's in all these places. It can feel really clunky and inefficient right from the start. So the complete opposite of luxury. So to fix these mistakes, I recommend sharing your pricing estimates. So before you even spend time preparing a detailed scope of work or construction or furnishing estimate, use past project data to provide a range to your potential clients. So when you're talking to them in your discovery call, if you do a consultation, anytime you're emailing them in your investment guide, share those numbers. So when they get the contract from you and the scope of work and your fee, it's not a huge surprise. Use a scope template. So you probably do a lot of the same project types, right? So maybe you're a kitchen and bath designer, you always do kitchens and baths. Make a copy of a scope that you've done that's really nicely written out and detailed, and save that as your template. So then you get a new project and you copy paste that scope into this new client scope. So just save yourself a ton of time. Again, if you don't do a consultation or you do a complimentary consultation, And this whole part of your inquiry phase is free. You need to work to make that as efficient as possible for you. So that way you're not putting together a scope and doing a discovery call and emailing back and forth, and it's taking you 8 hours and you didn't get paid for any of it. So definitely use a scope template. Then when you do put your scope together, be specific. Specify in your scope the rooms included, the level of service, the number of installations, the length of the contract, and then be clear on payments, revisions, and other hot button items so they don't later bite you in the butt because you didn't include any of that information in your contract. When you send over the proposal and the contract to the client, I would always recommend letting them know when you could start the project. So here's the financial information, the legal information about the project, and then here's actually when we can start. So again, you're nudging them to work with you, right? Like if this all looks good, we can start as soon as next week or next month. And then you could even go one step further and lay out. And then that means you'd be sitting at your design presentation by, July 15th. So really start to put them in the shoes of becoming a client or being a client. Then again, use contract software. So when you're sending over your contract, send it all in one. Send your contract, your invoice, the proposal email, send it all in one step. So the client just has to look at one email. They don't have to jump all over the place to find the different things you've sent them. So again, even if you're not a luxury designer, interior design is a luxury service, right? Our clients or your clients, they don't need, they do need it because, we've all seen their houses, but like they don't need it. And so you have to make sure that your service and the experience you're taking your potential clients through feels really luxurious and easy. So some onboarding phase mistakes. Premature onboarding. I see this a lot. I see this where designers send welcome materials to a potential client, but the client hasn't signed a contract. They haven't paid a fee. They haven't said yes. So all of a sudden they're like, wait, we didn't say we're working with you, but you're sending me details about our first meeting and an onboarding questionnaire. Why do you need all this information? I didn't even say yes. I'm actually still interviewing someone else. So if you do that, you're muddying the water between prospect and client and causing a lot of confusion and potentially making it an awkward situation if the client's like, I don't actually want to work with you, or I don't know if I want to work with you. On the flip side of that is delayed onboarding. So if it takes days or weeks, hopefully not weeks, to onboard a new client, meaning you're welcoming them into your company, they'll likely be frustrated, right? They've just written this check, they've signed this contract, they are so excited they chose a designer. And if you delay on onboarding them, it feels very maybe they didn't really want to work with me, or maybe they don't like my project, or maybe they just wanted the fee and that's all they care about. So they'll likely be frustrated, and then they'll question their investment in your services because again, right when they sign on with you, it feels very celebratory. If you don't onboard them at all, so we see all three of these. If you don't onboard your clients at all, so you don't send anything formal, you don't send anything to welcome them as a new client, you don't send a thank you for sending you the check, you don't acknowledge that they have just signed a contract with you and made this really big, important decision that's going to impact their life, right? You're going to design the space for them. It's going to be amazing. So if you don't send anything formal to welcome them or to establish the expectations for a successful project, be ready for a very frustrating project, right? Clients who don't know what's next, clients who have a lot of questions, clients who email you all the time because there's no one central source of truth. If you have too many steps in your onboarding phase, meaning you're sending multiple emails, so they get, an email about this one thing that you need them to do, and then you send them another email because you remembered, oh yeah, you also need to send me your blueprints, and then they get another email, oh yeah, that's right, could you also send me inspiration photos or house plans or pictures of your existing stuff or your Wi-Fi access, whatever. Then again, they're going to start to think, wait, this is so clunky. Is this how they're going to be throughout the whole process? Oh my gosh, now I need to be more organized. So they may question your efficiency and your experience. And also if you're an hourly designer, that's very expensive for you to be sending emails all the time and forgetting things. The other phase or the other mistake we see at onboarding is no information collected. So this means you're maybe welcoming them to your company, but it's very general and you're actually not collecting any information that's going to allow you to start the project on the right foot. So we have a lot of designers who won't even start a kickoff meeting until they've received, X, Y, and Z from the client because there's no point. They can't do anything. So if your onboarding process isn't gathering important information about your client and their preferences, then you can absolutely expect your client to be anxious and ask a lot of questions about, well, how are you going to understand my style? How do you know what I like? How are you going to know where to source items from? So you can calm a lot of their fears if you do collect that information upfront at onboarding. So here's some ways to fix the onboarding phase. So onboard your clients quickly. So again, they've just written you a check. They have just signed, they've made this really big decision. And to you, it's just another thing that you do every day. But to them, this is their home. Like, this is where their family lives. This is so, so exciting to them. So onboard them once they've signed their contract and paid their first fee. So both have to happen, because they could pay and then not sign the contract and be like, actually, we're not going to do it. And, they back out, or vice versa. They sign the contract and then never send the check. Well, you obviously can't start a project or schedule them into your calendar if you don't have payment from them. So you should onboard them quickly once you receive both of those items. So again, you are validating their decision to work with you. They're not going to have any buyer's remorse. If you can formalize the process, you can send a welcome guide that details your process for the particular service they booked, and then what the client can expect at each key milestone. So use casual language, not jargon. Like, don't confuse them. This isn't a time to impress them with all your, FF&E. And I mean, again, those are not super complex terms, but they don't necessarily know. They just want to work, where are you going to shop? Where are you going to source? Where's my furniture coming from? Whatever. So use this welcome guide as the central source of truth for them, for what they can expect through their project, not only from you, but what you'll need from them at each of those phases. Then when you send that over to them, you send the onboarding email, send it in one email that has all the information, right? Because again, you have a lot of stuff you need to collect from them and a lot of stuff you need to tell them about once you first get started. And rather than send all those emails, if you can send one email, one source of truth to reference, it'll just make everything so easy. They can just pin it to the top of their inbox, so they can always check back. And then you, as the business owner, can always refer back. Yep, remember in your onboarding email, we sent over the welcome guide if you want to go ahead and take a look at that for that question or whatever. The other thing is to collect key information. Use your onboarding process to establish some trust and let the client know you're going to do this thorough intake and discovery process, but then also to help you be amazing, right? If you know their preferences, if you know their style, these certain things, their hobbies, their, all the things that you need to incorporate into the design, you're going to be able to start that project and be so successful, and you're going to feel so confident going into it. So make sure that you're collecting key information when you do onboard them. So delivery phase. So I'm not saying the furniture is being delivered. I'm saying more as you're going through the design process, so the fulfillment phase of your process. So some mistakes we see, and I'm sure some of this is just going to happen all the time, but clients always need updates. So if your client is always emailing you to ask for updates, you're going to leave them feeling like the bad guy. And it's their house, it's their furniture, they paid for it. So they shouldn't feel like the bad guy. So if they always need updates, that makes them feel bad, right? As a customer, some people, sure, they don't really care. They're like, I don't care. I'll email them every single day and I'll text them and I'll call them. But hopefully that's not a majority of your clients. And most of them, they really do want to have a good time. They want to enjoy working with you. They don't want to bother you. So don't make them feel like the bad guy. Another one is the timeline is unclear. So if clients aren't sure what happens next or when that thing should happen, they're going to be confused and frustrated with your process. So if they don't realize that your design process takes 6 weeks and that they won't hear from you at all in those 6 weeks because you are head down with your team, doing drawings, sourcing, getting samples, getting pricing, they might be thinking, oh my gosh, they're doing nothing. They're doing nothing. Yet here you are designing this fabulous space for them with every single detail, pinned to a little pin board for them. They don't know that. So if the timeline isn't clear, if they don't know what's happening next, all you're doing is you're just building frustration. And so you better believe that they're going to come to that presentation with a chip on their shoulder. The other mistake is that clients are unprepared. So if your clients aren't prepared for your initial meeting, their design presentation, the revisions phase of your process, or their installation, it's going to cause a lot of wasted time. It's going to be frustrating. It's going to cause delays. And it could be expensive, right? If your client didn't know that they were supposed to have a check ready for the white glove delivery and receiving, and that they find out receiving's 10 grand, that hits hard and they're going to be very frustrated. And you better believe that they are not going to be happy to get that bill. But if they knew that was coming because you prepared them, that wouldn't, it still doesn't ever feel good to write a big check like that for receiving, but they would still feel much better about it because they knew it was coming. So ways to fix this. So let your client know your commitment to keeping them updated on their project, and then set a regular cadence for sending project update emails. So for some designers, that might be once a month. For some designers, it's every week. For some, it's every 2 weeks. Whatever it is, communicate that with your client and then send them consistent updates. The other thing is establish a timeline. So look at your process and really identify how long does it take between each of these key phases, right? So if I have a meeting with a client on day 1, and then the next meeting we have is to present, how many weeks is that between? And then let your client know that that's the timeline. This way they know when to expect something from you. They know when not to expect something from you. So it's been quiet for a few weeks. If it's been quiet for a few weeks, they're not thinking, oh my gosh, she's like, we're never going to see her again. They know, oh, it's because she's like probably, doing X, Y, and Z for my project. And then prepare your clients. Like, again, you're the expert. They have no idea that for install day that they should not get rid of all their furniture. Maybe something is actually going to not come in, and maybe something comes in damaged, and you don't want them to like remove all these things or whatever your processes are. So you want to let them know exactly what they can expect whenever you are in their home, whenever you're expecting them to do something like bring a check or schedule some time to review their design and give you feedback. So prepare them. So again, they're not a bad fit client if they just don't know, and if you didn't tell them what they can expect. So some offboarding mistakes that we see. So you wrap the project and the client still needs help. So you wrap it and it's wrapped, but the client doesn't. They still need help. So if nothing happens, once you complete your scope of work, your client, they might not actually know that you're done, especially because, you guys are working with them for like a year probably, or maybe even longer. So they might not realize that the project is done because there's like maybe one little thing that's still outstanding or something, but it's being handled by somebody else. So if it seems like you have projects that never end or clients who keep emailing you with questions, they're likely are just as frustrated as you are that this project is still ongoing. Like, oh my gosh, why are we still working on this thing? Another mistake we see is not asking for feedback. So if you never get feedback from clients, you'll never know what they thought went well, or where you could provide additional support, or elevate your process, or streamline, or add another email, or add in an extra meeting or something like that. Then another mistake we see is just the internal assessment. So again, you're not collecting that feedback, and then you're also not internally assessing what went well and what didn't, and making your client experience process better for the next project you take. Then offboarding phase fixes would be formalize the wrap up. So formalize your offboarding process by preparing a closing packet or a post-project summary guide to email the client, or just to print and leave with them on your last day together. You can do this with something celebratory, a bottle of wine or a gift, and then a closing packet in a folder from you if you want to do something like that. So it really formalizes that, hey, we're officially done. We still have a few little things here and there, but like we're wrapped. So make sure to include answers to common questions, tips for caring for their new items, ways to work with you again, as well as who to contact for future issues. And then, of course, in this closing packet or summary guide, you should ask for feedback, and also send emails afterward asking for feedback as well. You can't know what you don't know until you ask. And usually once you have done their installation, they are so excited. They're like screaming from the rooftops about how excited they are. So make sure to ask them quickly. And also it's just, again, a great way to wrap the project. Is like, hey, I know we still have a few more things, but I'd love if you could leave me feedback since the installation and the project is fresh in your mind. So create that feedback form and add it to your closing packet so you can send it to your clients. And then always refine your process. Always, always, always assess what went well and what didn't, and incorporate client feedback into future services. You may need to write additional FAQs or resources, update your contract. That's a big one. You might need to maybe add in a term or have an attorney help you clarify certain terms in there if you're having issues that your current contract doesn't address. You may need to, like I said, add more meetings, or maybe possibly take away some meetings. We find more often we're taking things away from the process that are just completely unnecessary. And again, most people who are hiring designers, they don't have a lot of time. So any way you can give them back time is going to be really valuable to them. You'll also be able to identify opportunities to provide additional support during stressful phases. So like during construction or demo, maybe there's something additional you can do to support that client. So that is it. I had 30 minutes to do that, and then we were having 30 minutes for Q&A. So I did just want to share with you a complimentary resource that I have. It's a complete guide to pricing your interior design services. I go through the 6 different ways you can price your services, and I share the pros and cons of each of those different billing methods. So you can grab that at dakotadesigncompany.com/design-files. And I guess we can open it up for questions. Okay, there's Sheila.
Okay. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Can you hear me? Nope, doesn't look like it. Give me 1 second here. I just want to double check. Test. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Oh, there we go. It's coming in now. Okay, perfect. So, wow, Katie.
I packed a lot in there.
You packed a ton in there. A lot of really, really great information, though. We do have a number of questions that have come in. If possible, I actually just want to jump back in your slide deck a bit. Can you go back to the onboarding? Let me think about this. Which stage was it? It was your first stage.
Inquiry phase?
Your inquiry phase. Okay,
yes.
Perfect. So you made a lot of great points about just kind of clarifying and defining to potential prospects the type of designer you are, the types of projects you like working on. You're trying to make sure that you're not getting inundated with a bunch of non-perfect fit clients that aren't going to have the budgets for you. So quick question for me actually is, how much of this are you kind of showcasing on your website, and how much of the inquiry stage are you reserving for sending out a questionnaire to a client and then collecting information during that questionnaire stage?
So, I think as a consumer, for me, I personally want more information, right? Like, I don't have a lot of time to waste with somebody who maybe turns out that they only do like commercial projects, or they only do a project that I'm not doing. So in my opinion, I think that you should write your website copy. So if you're defining your services on your website, it should say who the service is for, right? Like, we do like I see a lot of designers who just have a list of things they do rather than a service. And so like, I don't need that. I don't need that service, or I don't need that bullet point item that you do. But if you package it up as a service, so like, we do full service design. This is great for clients who are undergoing a large scale renovation. Or if you only do kitchens, this is great. Our full service is great for clients who are renovating their kitchen and need, somebody to come in and help them, design it, install it, and be there throughout the whole process. Obviously, it would be written a little bit better than I just said it. So I think definitely explaining who your services are for on your website, and then showcasing images of those projects right on your website. So again, when a client comes to you and is like, oh my gosh, I love that kitchen on your website, and I love that bathroom, and I love that living room, and those are all the things that I need, then you say, well, perfect, because that's exactly what I do, because that's what drew you into me. Then I think with sharing numbers, I think starting prices are always great. Again, if you have a productized service like an e-design or a design day or like a block of hours, I think absolutely share that. I mean, if it's the price is the price, just share it. I find that there's a lot of resistance to sharing numbers, but I also think if that's what you charge, wouldn't you rather save yourself all the time in discovery of not getting on a call with them, not potentially doing a consult, not going round and round? So I think definitely share those numbers. And I think too, sometimes when you don't share those numbers, people think you're too expensive. Like, oh, they must be really expensive because their body of work is beautiful. And like, I'm not even gonna reach out. They're probably like 20,000. I feel silly even asking, right? So sometimes you actually are turning people away if they don't see pricing. So I think on your website, I think you should share starting prices. For some of my clients, they're totally comfortable sharing everything. They share starting budgets for projects. They share, kind of ranges of how much like furniture costs. They'll share about working with receivers. They share about trade and first retail, because again, these are all questions that you're going to ask, or that your potential clients are going to ask you. So just, if you're comfortable with it, share that on your website. But if it's kind of up for grabs and you can do retail or you can do trade, or, then maybe you don't need to put some of that information on there. But in my opinion, I think starting prices is great, or at least room size, right? Like, we work on full home projects, or we work on 3 full rooms or more.
Okay, that's great. And my preference also would be to just kind of be open with it, because like you said, it's going to come out anyway.
Yeah.
If you're aiming to just bring in the perfect fit client for your business, then this is how you do it. You're just going to lay it all out there. This is exactly how I work. This is the type of project I want to deal with. This is the budget you can expect. And if that's out of your range, then you're probably best going and finding a different designer. And I think I think you just kind of have to get to a stage where you're comfortable saying, I'm going to miss out on that client. They're going to walk away, but you know what? They weren't a perfect fit anyway.
Yeah, you were going to get all the way through your discovery process and turn them away anyway.
Yeah, and then you wasted all those hours that you could have been spending on the right fit client.
Exactly, exactly.
Makes a lot of sense. With your contact form, do you feel like there is kind of like that happy medium stage where it's like, okay, this is too little information, this is just the right amount of information, and now we've gone way too deep and nobody wants to fill this sucker in?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think like not enough is when you, like I've seen so many for designers who don't even have a project address.
Right.
If you're in like Alaska and I'm here in Illinois, I'm not taking your project if I don't offer virtual design services. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And even if you do travel and you do take projects nationally, like you still want to know the project, because honestly, you could Google it real quick and see, oh, they're saying they want to do a full service project with me. I know that I have a $25,000 design fee minimum, but their house is a $200,000 house. Probably not going to be a good fit unless it's a tear down, right? Because no one's going to invest that in design fees for a house that's that price point. So I think that if you're just asking for their name, phone, email, and like message, like you could do better. I mean, you're a designer, right? Everything should feel elevated. Like when they're reaching out, it should be beautiful. It should feel elevated. So I think, obviously name, phone. I see some that don't have a phone number on there. So I'm like, so now you're telling me that you have to email them back. And in order to schedule a call, you have to like get the phone number from them. And if they don't give it to you, then what? What are you, it's just like you're making it harder on yourself. So project address, I like asking for referral source, because you can see, is this going to be a good fit, or is it a lead coming in from a client who we didn't like working with? Like we know that this is going to be hard, or it came in from a client who was my very first client ever, and I charged like $5 an hour and gave them my price on everything, and now I don't do that. I charge differently, right? So you can have a little bit more background going into the call. I obviously like asking project details. What service are you interested in? So if you do have multiple services, whether it's, construction or furnishings only, or, a design day or something like that, having a service drop down. And then I know some people don't like this, but I like to say like, what's your project budget, and give some ranges. And so if you know that your project budgets start at 100,000, maybe you say 100,000 or more, right? Or essentially the budget question can screen people out, because they can say, and even if you put budget on there, you'll still get people who are like, oh, well, I put the 100,000, but my budget's actually 10,000, but it didn't give me an option for that. And you're like, that
for a reason.
That's okay. So I think definitely, or if you have a smaller service, you can say, our full service, what's your budget for your project, not including design fees. And then you can put your ranges on there. And then maybe you have a smaller service like an e-design or design day. Maybe that has a smaller budget. So you could say, or I'm interested in your design day service, because then they know if I'm interested in the design day, that's not these bigger budgets. But if I'm interested in full service, it is going to be one of these bigger budgets. So I recommend that. And then, details about the project, and when are you wanting to get started? What's your project timeline? So I think, to me, those are like the only questions you really need on your discovery form. I think any other ones are really reserved for once they become a client, like your style, because if they're coming to you and filling out a form, their style is the style on your website. That's why they're reaching out. Like,
Katie, are you there? It looks like okay.
Can you hear me, see me?
It's a little bit robotic, but I think it's coming back.
Okay.
Can you hear me clearly?
I can hear.
Okay. We'll just see if it kind of kicks back in. I was going to ask one other quick question when it comes to the budget ranges. Do you actually choose to break down budget ranges when it's like, okay, this is what the design fee is going to be like versus this is what the product purchasing, this is what you should be setting aside for product purchasing? On
the contact form, no. So again, you're already kind of my recommendation is you've already kind of established that, full service design fees start at $10,000, let's say.
Okay.
And then if they click over to your contact form, because they're like, that seems reasonable. I've got 3 rooms I want to do, and that seems like a good number. Granted, maybe it's actually going to be 20,000 for those 3 rooms, but you're at least giving them, this is like a starting point. Then on the contact form, then you would just have the budget for the project, because if you give them what's your budget for design fees, they don't know. And honestly, they sometimes don't even know their project budget at all. And so that's why you get to this discovery call with them and you can say, hey, I noticed you clicked the, 100 to 200. However, you said you want to renovate like 6 rooms, kitchen, bathroom, furnishings. Like, what is this budget for? Is it for construction or is it just for furnishings? So you can open up that conversation by having that information.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm going to stop monopolizing you and I'll get over to the questions that are in the actual chat feed, okay?
Okay, awesome. Well, those are good questions.
All righty. So we did have somebody that was actually asking if you had any suggestions for contract software that they could be using.
So, well, I know you guys on DesignFiles, you can send contracts, right?
You can, but I'm just going to keep it open. So if you've got suggestions, then you can, yeah.
Yeah, so I know DesignFiles has the option to do that, and I think that's great to have everything in one program. We also really like Honeybook and Dubsado. It's a client relationship management, software, and it allows you can digitally sign your contracts, send them along with your proposal, your scope of work. They can just you can send one email. It can be templated and added right in there. So we really like those 2 programs.
Okay, awesome. I've got another question here from one of our designers. She's just curious what you would typically include in the welcome package.
So welcome package. So when you're onboarding a new client, so you have to think, what do they need to know, right? Like now they have all their questions, and the questions are different from when they were inquiring to work with you. Because when they're inquiring to work, they just need to make sure, like, is this a good fit? Does it work with am I going to like working with you? Can I afford you? So now that they're a client, they've already established all of that. So now they need to know, okay, what do we do now? So it should lay out your process, and it should lay out what happens now and then what happens after that. And it should also let them know what you need from them, right? So depending on the type of services you offer, you might need, probably you need inspiration images. You're probably going to have a design questionnaire you have them fill out. If you are doing construction projects, you're probably going to need their plans. You're probably going to need maybe their like allowances that they've already, been given by their builder, maybe contact information, their trades team. You might need that information. If you're doing like e-design or a design day, you might need measurements. You might need photos of their room. You might need a catalog of their existing items. Like, you need to gather those things up front, whatever you need for that particular service. You can share about your team, introduce the point of contact. So if you have a team or like somebody in your office who is their like designated point of contact, introduce that person early. So that way they can handle all those emails and, inquiries and questions, not you, the designer. And then again, as you lay out your process and let them know what to expect at each phase, I like to give a general timeline. So typically our clients do have once we work together, they see like, oh, it always takes me 4 weeks in design phase, or it always takes me 8 weeks, or it's 6 to 8 weeks. So provide that range and then kind of let them know what they can expect from you and then what you expect from them, right? And so again, this is a fun and celebratory thing. Yes, you're sharing house rules as well. So you're going to share with them about like your revisions process. You're going to share with them about how you order furnishings. If you're going to go shopping with them, if they can sit on things. So think about the questions that now as a customer of yours, as a client, what are the things they're going to ask, right? Is like, what if I don't like something? What if, can we go shopping together? Like give them all that information right then. So it's not an issue later on down the road when you're like, yeah, no, we don't do that. And they're like, well, I need to sit on every single sofa and chair. And you're like, well, that's not how we work. So this isn't going to work, right? You don't want to find that out later. So just lay that out right from the beginning.
Okay, great. Let's see here. Here's another question. If we have multiple team members in our company, how can we ensure each team member delivers the same consistent and fabulous client experience?
So I think a big part is, like I say, we always start with the process when we work with our clients. And I think it's really looking at each of your different services. So even if you do full service, like maybe your full service furnishings process is different, obviously, than your full service new build construction process. So I would just take each of those services and then just map out like what happens and just use these phases that I just talked through. What happens at inquiry phase? Like what information do we send out? What happens when we send the proposal? What template do we use for the scope? What contract template, right? Because again, if you have different services, you might have different contracts. So I think mapping out what happens in each of those phases and either putting it into a project management software, we use Asana, or some designers are like, I can't do more software, and just type it out on a list. And with each new client, if it's a construction client, you print the list, you put in a binder for that client, and you just run through the list. And I think another way to create that consistent experience is to create these emails, the guides, the things that go out, like any touch point meetings. So that way, if you're the business owner and you have a certain way you want things done, which I know a lot of designers, this is like your creative, baby. And if you're kind of a control freak, by creating those things as the owner and then giving them to your team, that they're approved. Like, exactly. I know that any exchanges that are happening, it's stuff that I created and made. It's not this guy over here who I just hired who's like got his own process going on, right? Everyone just follows that process. So that's what I recommend, is using some form of a checklist, whether it's a software, like a project management software, or an actual just checklist that you print, and then templating out as much of the like key milestone interactions, emails, guides, et cetera, as possible.
It makes a lot of sense. We do the same thing for our business as well, where we set up playbooks so that if we have somebody leave and somebody else comes in, they get access to the playbook, and then they just know how to follow the exact steps to make sure they're doing that task. Yep. We expect it to be done. And I think that you make a good point in that it's probably a good idea to have that for each of the individual services that you are offering. So there's just one playbook for this entire service, one for here, and then you can keep churning those out.
Well, and then it just saves you from having to like tell that employee like, oh, no. And that's
the time that you save is amazing.
Yeah. So it's an investment of time, but you'll continue to, you'll be able to leverage that for the duration of your company, as long as you offer those services.
Yeah, totally agree. Awesome. Okay. So let's keep going through here. So your welcome package is getting a lot of attention, your comments on that. So yeah, they were asking if there was an option for a breakdown on the welcome guide, which I think we already covered. So we're going to bypass this one. How do you keep clients positive and understanding with when dealing with shipping delays or damaged products? So do you just have certain set responses for this?
Yeah. So I think, of course, it's always setting the expectation that it's probably going to happen. Mm-hmm. And letting them know how your team handles it and why you use the receiver, right? So it's not just your team handling it. And again, you can let them know. Sometimes there's going to be claims and you won't even know it. Like, we're handling it right away. And the benefit of using a receiving warehouse is they send us photos of anything that's damaged. They have an in-house repair person, or we go to the vendor and the vendor replaces the item or authorizes a repair for a specialist to come in. So you can share all those things way ahead of time in your receiving or in your welcome guide. You can, if that's something that you are seeing a lot of, hey, there's going to be delays, there's going to be damages, but we are going to handle it. And here's how we're going to handle it. So that way they know, like, you're going to get your project update email every other Friday or every, the first of every month. And we're going to let you know where everything is. So they always know that you're being very proactive with your communication. Because again, I know, of course, this is just the industry, like, it's always going to happen. But I know that a lot of clients during COVID, or a lot of our clients, like they just couldn't keep up with all the updates because there were so many projects going and items delaying. And what was worse is when clients, like their clients, had to reach out to ask, and then the designer had to give them bad news. Oh, shoot, that delayed again. And they're like, you didn't even know, you didn't even check. Right. So make it, or have somebody on your team. Like I always say, like, if you haven't hired somebody yet, the first person you should hire is someone to help you with your orders, and let them place your orders, follow up with vendors, do all the client updates, because that is like, it takes you out of design for like a big bulk of time if you have to put all the orders in for like a whole house. So definitely have somebody on your team who, like, that is their job, is they check those orders and they get into, like, for some of our clients who have a lot of projects going at the same time, we'll do like A and B week clients. So maybe you as a company are sending emails out every Friday, but your clients are only getting every other. And so on, A weeks, you're checking A week clients status, and then B week, you're checking B week clients. So not perfect. And there's going to be a lot of like overlap with like, oh shoot, I just reached out to that vendor last week. I should have asked him about the Smith project too. But definitely, like, always know that, like, there's really nothing that can't be fixed with an interior design project. Like, you guys can like cut a couch in half and put it back together if it needs to fit down a tight stairwell, right? Like, you guys have like all the magic. So I think just letting your clients know that it's a possibility and that here's how you're going to handle it. And then when it happens, let them know well ahead of them finding out on their own.
And just kind of touching on that. So like you mentioned during your presentation, like, clients, they want updates. They want regular updates. They want to know what's going on the project at all times. Do you find that you have just kind of like a set, I don't know, a set number of days, a set week that goes by where you're just saying, okay, we're going to follow up on this. We have to follow up on this. Is there a pre-made schedule that you have that allows you to just kind of say, okay, this client is due this particular follow-up on this certain topic or anything like that,
so,
just to make it easier?
Yeah, I think it's really just more like most designers will just have a certain day that they send out their updates, and then they just track that client throughout the week. So like, oh, we need to let Katie know that, her sofa came in. So when we email her on Friday, we'll let her know the sofa's there if she wants to have it delivered. So I would say that's really like, you're wanting to look at, if there's any appointments coming up internally, like for you and the client, if there's any appointments that are happening at their house, if there's any deliveries, any invoices coming up. That's another one I think is, clients all of a sudden are hit with like a fee and they're like, wait, what? I didn't know I owed you $5,000. And you're like, yeah, we've moved into the monthly billing of the project now. They're like, oh, well, that would have been nice to know. And then you're the designer and you're like, I'm so mad. Like all these people owe me money. It's like, well, you sent it to them a day before it was due and you didn't remind them. Like they get so lost in the process. Like, again, they're not the expert. So yeah, I think just find that cadence that makes sense for you. And then just, kind of throughout the week, add anything to that you want to update the client on that's not like super time sensitive, and then include that in your update email.
Okay, cool. Let's see here. What would be a typical gift you would give a client? What about gifts for eDesign clients?
So the gifting is all going to be dependent on how much the client is spending with your company, I think. So obviously like an eDesign client is going to be very different than a full service, full home client. And so I think you're going to probably have a couple of different like levels of gifts. I definitely think when you're sending an onboarding gift, so when someone first inquire or when they first like become a client, I recommend sending something that doesn't have your logo on it, because I see that a lot. And I think sometimes it can be cool, like if it's like a notebook or like a bag or something that the client is going to be able to use throughout their project, right? Like, hey, we're designing your whole house. I know you're going to be out like getting samples or doing whatever. And here's like a bag for you to kind of corral all of your things. So that way, when we have meetings, you just grab your, Katie McFarlan Interiors bag and you bring it, or a notebook for them to like write down ideas, keep track of stuff. So I think that, that's when it's okay to like brand something and send it to a client. But otherwise, you're an interior designer. Like, that your client doesn't want some like logo gift sitting on their, whatever. So I always think find like a gift that's pretty neutral and safe to send as an onboarding gift to clients. And maybe you have like 3 different tiers or something like that. Like maybe it's like a candle for level 1, and like maybe it's like a plant, or I don't know, something that's like easy to send that everybody would like. It's not, not alcohol, nothing personal, because again, you're just starting, you don't know them yet. And then I think if it's like an eDesign project, like again, depends on your fee. I don't think typically there's enough room in the fee to send a gift. So I would probably just do a handwritten card. So, and again, people don't really do that as much anymore, right? So it just adds that really nice touch that you put something in the mail. Like, I'm so excited to get started with you. Thank you for choosing me. So something small like that. But again, if it's, I think there's different parts throughout the process too. Like an onboarding gift is, again, a really great way to celebrate this relationship that you're just starting. And like, it builds some reciprocity right from the very beginning. And then throughout the process, again, depending if it's a big project and all of that, like you can do additional gifting, maybe gift certificates. If it's like the kitchen renovation, you want to send them out to like dinner and the movies or something like that. Or, I know some designers will do like an organizing gift certificate to like a local professional organizer. So obviously that's going to be on a higher end project. Like special custom gifts toward the end of the project on install day, having something like that, a nice bottle of champagne, like a charcuterie tray. So they come in and they like walk into a party, like their room's finished, their house is done, and like here's some like some champagne.
Celebrate.
And, yeah. Like you're like, wait, what? Like this is amazing. So again, it really comes down to what your client is spending with you. And there's a great book that I like. It's called Giftology, and that has a lot of information about like gifting. And that can kind of help you get some ideas.
Very cool. Okay, let's see here. Do you have an example of the closing packet or the summary guide that you can share?
Yeah. So in this guide, again, so you're wrapping up, right? Again, it depends on the service that you book. But if you're wrapping up a full service project, like just think, what are the questions that people are going to have, right? Like if you ordered everything from your trade sources, you're likely not giving them like any paperwork on those items. Like you're not going to give them the receipt from your vendor. So they don't necessarily know that like, oh, I'll just go onto the website and look to see how to take care of these items, right? So if you often get, hey, I just spilled something on my, my new rug, like how should I clean it? You can put cleaning instructions in there for the different, again, you'd make this once, same with the welcome guide. You make it once and then you leverage it again and again with all of your clients. So you can put care instructions in there for the products you typically source. If you source a lot of vintage, like you'll obviously put some care instructions in there. If you do a lot of like washable or performance fabrics, right, put cleaning instructions in there, for like what generally applies. I recommend also sharing about your other services, because again, if you're doing full service, if you have other services, if you are doing full service with a client and they've been with you for a year, they have no idea what your services are. They haven't even been on your website in like a year. So if you have another service, so maybe you offer a design day or these other different types of services or blocks of time, you can include that information in there. So it reminds them, okay, here's a way that I can keep working with her. Because maybe I loved my whole kitchen renovation, but I have my kid room that I want to do, but I don't really need full service. So I didn't know you even offered that. I have a lot of clients who tell me my customers had no idea that we offered this whole other service, and they're able to book from their full service clients into these smaller services. So definitely putting that information in there. I think also if you have record keeping, or if you're archiving your software, so DesignFiles, if they're going to lose their access, let them know, hey, you're going to have access to your design files for this long, or you're going to have access to your invoices if you want to print them and save them. So you have them for your records, for insurance, etc. Kind of let them know that general housekeeping. Always designate a point of contact. If you have any issues with anything, email someone who's not me. Definitely put that in there. If you have any other bonus tips or resources that you can share locally, I think that's a really great idea, because again, just think of all the things that people keep asking you or emailing you about that you're like, oh, I should have just given this to you right then, because now I've got to stop what I'm doing and email this over. So I find information for the people who come and seal your furniture and clean it. Everybody needs to know that they've just invested in a design with you and in this high-end furniture. Give them that information. Who do you use for carpet cleaning? Who do you use for I don't know, do you have a couple of favorite spots that you're happy to recommend? This is my favorite spot for accessories, or this is where I love to go for flowers. Or again, as an interior designer, you kind of know all these cool secret backdoor places that we as the general public don't often know. And how cool to know, oh, my designer loves shopping here for accessories. I'm definitely going to go there. So I think sharing some of those local resources that will help them is a really good idea. And then also you can, if you're printing it and leaving it with your clients, you can include a QR code to your Google My Business. And so you can just put that in there and print it. And then you can say can you leave me a review? And so they just snap it with their phone and they can leave you a Google review, right? Just like that. You can really customize it. However, if you do different services, maybe you want to include some styling tips, right? If it's a design day or an e-design, maybe you have some general style tips, or online resources that you want to share, favorite bedding sources, things like that. You can, really just whatever you want, whatever you think would be fun to give to your clients and that they would like and that would be helpful. I think you could include that in there.
Very cool. Just kind of touching on a little bit on the feedback. Do you have specific questions that you like to ask when you're trying to collect feedback to get a sense for how the project went? Or is it just a general, hey, how do you feel like this went?
Yeah, so you absolutely want to ask specific questions. And if you can make it as easy make it easy on them by giving them options to choose from and being very specific in your questions, because you're not going to get a lot of feedback if it's open-ended and they feel like they've got to type and type and type. So again, getting feedback and a testimonial, those are two different things. Sometimes you can get feedback and then from their feedback, you can create a testimonial. Or they'll write the testimonial. So I like to have a story. I like to show a story, right? So in the testimonial, I want to kind of see where were you before? What were your hesitations? What did you try? And where are you now that you've worked with me, right? What was the result? So you can show this interesting story of objection and then all the way to having this amazing experience with your company. I like some of the questions I like asking are what surprised you? What surprised you about the process? Because that is my favorite question, because it gives you a lot of insight into something that you're doing really great that you had no idea was even a big deal. You're oh, that? I didn't even think that was a big deal, but they're that was so cool that you did that. So now you maybe know that you can keep it a surprise, or you can start putting that into your marketing that, hey, people are really loving this one thing we do, that we just do it, but they love it. And then was there a time, what was the most stressful part of the process? So that way, again, you can learn where you can focus more resources, right? Maybe it's, hey, I know that once they start demo about 2 weeks in, I know that I need to call them. I know that I need to schedule a call, just check in. Hey, how are you doing? I need to send them, drop by their house and drop something off for them, a card or whatever, right? I know that there's something that needs to happen. So I like those questions. And again, short and sweet, right? Like don't collect feedback you're not going to use. So definitely make sure they're questions that you will act on. Otherwise, just don't ask them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the what were your hesitations or concerns? That one's massive because now you're going to be able to hear from your customers what their biggest concerns were, and then you take that information and then you readjust your website to make sure that you're addressing those concerns right out the gate.
Yep.
So definitely a good one to keep in there.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, it's 2:00. Do you want to do a few more? Do you have like a couple minutes to do a few more?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's have a quick look here. Are there any suggestions for a communication template package for purchase? Okay, let me see if I can get this one. Are there any suggestions for a communication template package for purchase with emails for intake, updates, etc., already written and ready for you to personalize?
Oh, well, that's a great question. We actually have templates like that. So I have like the one-on-one side of my company, and then we also have the template side. And so we have client experience templates for designers who offer full service design. And then we also have templates for designers who offer design day services. And so that would include all of those emails, fully written out. They've been professionally copy edited, and we update them twice a year. So we go through and make sure like anything we're seeing with our one-on-one clients is still like, we're pulling that through to make sure everything's still relevant with what's happening in the industry. And then you would just go through and personalize it with your information. So there's like prompts and little highlighted areas where you would personalize that. And we include emails and forms, so emails and questionnaires, or you can also do emails and then the guides and questionnaires as well.
Okay, perfect. Maybe Cole, if you are on there, maybe let's just leave a link to Katie's website so people can pop over and have a look at that. And then I've just got maybe a couple more here. During the inquiry timeline, do you provide a frequently asked question package?
Yeah, so that would be in your investment guide. So you, again, like we want to make this really easy for them. We don't want them to feel like you need to send them more information. Like it should be pretty succinct and in one document that you send over to them. Because again, what that does is you're going to tell them about your, high level design process. Here's what it's like to work with our team. Here's what you can expect for pricing. Here's how long the process takes. Here's where we source. Again, all those buying decisions, right? Like that they need to know about, like if I'm starting my project today, but your design process is 12 weeks, that might not work for the client. So in that investment guide, you would include those details, and then you'd also include some FAQs all in one place. So again, what this does is like your potential client gets this and they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know I should be asking these questions. Like she answered all these questions I didn't even know to ask. Like she's so good. So it definitely helps to establish your expertise and build so much trust, because you're coming out of the gate giving them questions they didn't even know they should be asking. And like the designer down the street didn't do that. And like I've had designers who have said like, oh my gosh, like just me reading these questions, I feel like I have something to stand behind, right? Like it's written. So it's a policy, like, so people don't ask questions, they don't push because they read it. So yeah, definitely include that in your investment guide.
Okay, awesome. And then I do want to be respectful of your time, Katie. So we're just going to take one more question here.
Okay.
So how do you convey well the cost of projects before someone reaches out to you?
How do you convey well the cost of projects? Is that what you said?
Yes.
So, well, I think professional photography. I think that something that we see a lot is, and I know when you're just starting out, it's hard. Like you don't have any finished projects. And I know a lot of designers who their business completely exploded in a good way through COVID, and they are like just getting pictures now. So I think definitely invest in professional photography. So even if you don't have any projects yet to photograph, hire a professional photographer and do a brand shoot. Go to a showroom, go to reach out to some local vendors, go to like call ahead and see if you can come in and like set up a flat lay and create some little vignettes for you to do and have professional photos taken. I think that is one way to convey the value. I think having, a well-designed website, again, it's so aesthetic for people that if they come onto your website and there's no pictures or it's just stock images, there's an iPhone picture of you, and there's no words on your website. There's like a list of the 10 things that you can do, and your social isn't active, and there's no portfolio pictures, and you're like, my fee is $10,000 a room. They're gonna be like, huh? Like it's just not gonna match up. So like you want your client to invest a lot of money in you, and they're not gonna see their result for like a year. If it's a construction project, if it's furnishing, they're probably not gonna see it for like 4 months. So you're asking them to come and invest all this money with you with the design fee, and then to give you all the money for furnishings that they've never even seen. and you won't even pay $500 to get photos, right? Like, I think, I'm not saying this to this designer at all, but I'm saying I have these clients who are like, well, I haven't had a project yet. I can't invest. I'm like, well, then how do you expect someone else to invest in you if you won't invest in you? Like, they have more on the line. They have their home. Like, this is just a photo shoot, you know? So I think definitely getting those pictures up on your website of projects you want more of, professional, like high quality, photos. I think that's a great way to convey your value and the projects you want more of. Does that answer the question?
I think it definitely touches strongly on the question. I think we also touched on the fact that you just want to consider sharing what your pricing is like on your website. Let people know this is what you can expect, even if you're starting with your minimum. And then Katie, maybe you can kind of touch on a little bit more on how you would, let's say that I came into your website, I can see what your minimum is like, I can see the kind of designs you do, I'm excited to move forward with you, I tell you a bit about my project. How would you then kind of give me a sense of what I can expect this total cost to be, some sort of estimate that I can wrap my brain around?
Yeah. So again, this is going to require some, like, a little diligence on the business owner's part, right? Like, look at, again, we talked about the offboarding. There's no internal assessment. Like, you should be doing a review of your projects and looking after each project, like, okay, what were the design fees, right? If you bill hourly and you did 3 rooms and it turns out that was, $10,000 in hourly fees you billed. Okay, I've got a sense that 3 rooms that are furnishing only are about $10,000. So you can start using that data. If you see that for those furnishings, it was $100,000. And you can start to see it's usually about $30,000 a room. Or look, my living rooms are usually $35,000. My kid bedrooms are usually $15,000. You can start to just gather all that data and compile it. An easy number I like to use is the price per square foot of furnishings, because you can, like, look at any of your projects and say, hey, like, all the projects you're loving on my website, those are usually about, 75 to 125 a square foot for furnishings, like fully done, full service, soup to nuts, like you're walking in and it's a party. So you can use that data and share that information just generally upfront in your discovery call. And so when you have, like, you might not have a lot of project data, right? And I think I heard somebody say, like, then just go put a design together wherever you would source, put a couple rooms together, price it out, and use that as your data, right? Like, and say, this is about where projects fall. So I think just arming yourself with information so you have confidence. So when somebody asks and pushes back, like, well, sorry, this is based on 5 years of project data. That's how I can give you a quote without seeing your space. Or, like, you have all this information. It's like, it's in the truth is in the numbers, like, it doesn't lie. So I think if you can look back at your previous project data for your fees, for your project budgets, and, if you really look and say, like, hey, typically we're only doing projects that start at 3 rooms. Those are the only inquiries we're getting. That could be your minimum that you share and convey on your website.
Nailed it. Nailed it. That's how you deal with it. And that's how you, like, say it to a client where they can't argue with you anymore.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Honestly, Katie, this was fantastic. This was so much great information. I hope everybody got a lot out of this. We are going to be sending out the replay. So if you came on for the last half and you missed the first half, don't worry about it. You're going to get the full video. But this was fantastic. Lots of great info. And I'm so happy you came on here.
Oh, good. Thank you for having me. This was a lot of fun and I definitely enjoy it. And I love Design Files. I recommend it to all of our clients. So I thought it would be a good fit. So thank you so much for having me. And thanks everybody for the great questions.
All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. And I guess we'll see you. Well, actually, in July, we've got a big event coming up, but I'm going to hold off on telling you what that is until we get that email out to you. So keep your eyes on your inbox. All righty. We're going to say bye-bye for now, but thanks for joining.
All right. Bye.
Bye.